Bishop Sithembele Sipuka, thanks very much for affording us this opportunity to have a sit down with you as we are going to be congregating to different places come this weekend for the Easter holiday. But perhaps let's start with Bishop Sithembele Sipuka. Maybe shed some light to us and explain to us, where do you come from?
I come originally from Aidujwa, but I have been everywhere since my childhood. My father was an itinerant worker, working in this place and that place. In fact, when I became conscious of what was happening around me, I remember us moving from place to place. And one of those places was Mthatha. When I was 8, my father was working in one of the farms here. We were not particularly churchy, going to church. I know that we're supposed to be Methodist, but we never did. And then one day, I just followed my friends to the Catholic Church here in Gangelizwe. And that's when I became a Catholic. I never stopped, going. It appealed to me until I was to be baptized. And then they started looking for my parents because I was coming alone. My parents were not coming to church, and then they came. And then the rest is history. My family is Catholic now, and I'm a Catholic bishop in the diocese where I became a Catholic, And then we moved to Butterworth when Butterworth became the industrial area of Transkei at that time. My father finally got a kind of a permanent job there in the factory. And so that is where then I grew up. Did my primary and my matric. Also, when we got into Butterworth, I continued to be close to the church. I actually grew up really in the church. And looking at the example of my parish priest, very committed man and orderly man, I was inspired to be a priest. One thing that I have found attractive is what we call in the Catholic Church the Eucharist, which is generally known as the Last Supper. We have a belief in the Catholic Church that that Last Supper is not only a memorial of what Christ did, but actually when we do it, Christ again become present as he was present, with his disciples, but in a what we call sacramental form, in a sign form, that in the bread and the wine, Christ is present.
Just take us through some of the stages that you had to undergo leading up to you now being a bishop of the church.
When you become a Catholic priest, you do not earn a lot of money. It's a vocation. It has no money. And my family, as I've told you, my father was an itinerant worker. I felt that as the eldest, I had the obligation to assist here and there. So I worked for 2 years in the post office, and some people were thought that was the end of it. But after 2 years, it came back again, this desire to be a priest. And so I went then to the seminary and studied for 7 years. After 7 years, I went to work in Queenstown as a priest for 3 years. And after 3 years, I was sent to Rome to study theology. Finished master's there in theology, and I came back. When I came back, I was sent to the seminary, which is where I had studied myself for the priesthood. I stayed there many years, eventually becoming a rector of the seminary. which is the college where priest candidates study, until I became a bishop. Then I was appointed here in Mthatha in 2008. Now, there are many bishops in the Catholic Church. There are about 36 dioceses. This is one of them. And I then joined the conference. There is what we call the Conference of Bishops. And soon after my ordination as a bishop, I was elected to be in the board of bishops, which is concerned with the administration of our central office in Pretoria. And then soon after that, I was appointed the deputy vice president, second deputy president of the conference. After that, first deputy president, and then I became president of the conference. A job that I actually left last year, January. And then I had also become the president of the South African Council of Churches.
That was not an easy journey, I would assume. Maybe, perhaps you can walk us through then, some of the challenges that you had to encounter. I
must first note the blessing of it. Being a Transkei boy who grew up here, it has been a lot of exposure for me. While I took this task with fear and trembling, I'm grateful for what it has made me to be. But you are right; it has not been easy. You have to find your way around. How do you lead bishops? Some of them were bishops while you were students. While you were a student. But then the other challenging things, point about it as well, is that as a leader you've got to respond to events as they occur in the name of the bishops, and some of those, you are not trained for. One difficult moment, for example, has been the emergence of sexual abuse of minors, in the Catholic Church by priests. Something which really rocked, the church. One had to come to terms with that because it's something that you do not expect. You expect the church to be the safest place, and not the place where the trust of people, can be broken, especially of innocent people like children. But then I had to realize that this is happening. I could not pretend that it was not happening. But fortunately, we have a Pope who has leadership, and we have now found ways of dealing with that. Not only dealing with it when it happens, but to find preventive measures of trying to avoid it. The others really, they regard the social and political happenings, in our country, particularly the corruption, and some of the people in the government. One knows them, you grew up with them, and how do you get to challenge them? How do you take a prophetic stance, against them at personal level, But in your role as a leader of the church, you have to find a way of challenging that.
Maybe perhaps you can, talk to us then about what role does that particular body play, especially, with the unity that is, concerned amongst the different forms and really types of churches.
Yeah, as you might know from history, there was a time when the church was one, and then at the Reformation, it splintered, and we believe, as all churches, that we have an obligation towards unity because Jesus Christ asked for that unity, that we may all be one. And so we are not really happy with the situation as it is because in our division as churches, we are not giving a good example to the society of unity. And so the ecumenical movement, as it is called, which is this body that now I am heading as this president, aims at uniting the churches. And there are two aspects of this unity. One is unity in action, where we unite for common purpose of acting towards achieving charity and against injustice and against human dignity. And so, as the South African Council of Churches, we do this, collectively. We present ourselves as kind of a watchdog of such events. And when they occur, we then agree on acting together. When there's a crisis like the pandemic of the COVID-19 pandemic, that was one occasion where we really tried to act, in a united way. You will recall during the apartheid system, in the times of the leadership of Archbishop Tutu, the South African Council of Churches was one of the bodies that was in the forefront in fighting the laws of apartheid and its consequences. So that is one big part and a very important part. But the other part as well is to work towards unity doctrinally, because we are called to truth, and this truth we possess in various forms, really, as churches. We highlight maybe one aspect, and another church highlights one aspect, and so a big part, therefore, of ecumenism is to come together to talk and dialogue about, in these digressions, that we have, how can we somehow come to a kind of a convergence? Because it cannot be that, you have your own truth as this church, and then another one has her own truth, and another one has his own truth, and yet you all claim, to be talking on behalf of Christ. So what is the truth then in the end if everybody is saying that, my church is telling the truth? And so it is important that we enter into dialogue and see how we have misunderstood each other, in the past, because some of these differences really are based on misunderstanding and prejudices.
I want us now to talk about social cohesion and really the role that the church plays as far as social cohesion is concerned.
To the role really now of the church today, that is where the question of ecumenism really come in, that we cannot convincingly persuade people to come together when we are not together, So the call for unity in the church, as envisaged by the principles of ecumenism, is more now than before, because our society is still divided, as it sometimes erupts. These racial divisions, sometimes in a very nasty way. Much as we would like to see ourselves as one nation, but there are various occasions of divisions that erupt and are not few. They are many, and so we need to continue as church to call for this unity, in our country. But it is also a challenge to us as church to work towards our own unity so that we practice what we preach.
Just to dive into the burning question and perhaps the most contentious issue, which is, most religious leaders nowadays, they critics may say that they meddle into political developments that are happening in the country. Maybe perhaps tell us then about some of those remarks that some of the traditional leaders often have to find themselves in, particularly maybe we can even be specific to you yourself, reflecting on one or two occasions where you yourself had, to make remarks about the political fraternity.
You cannot separate politics from faith because you are dealing with human dignity there. And if that human dignity is trampled, whether it is in the sector of religion, like it happens sometimes, like when I shared with you about the sexual abuse of minors, and also the recent cases that you hear about, crimes committed by pastors. We have to stand up, and say, this is wrong. But also, when it happens as well at political level as well, or at social level, you cannot but stand up and say, no, this is not right. The fact that it is done by politicians does not make it a ground that you cannot intervene. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no demarcation really of involvement. That you can only be involved here as long as the dignity of the human person is affected. We will get involved anywhere and everywhere.
But then, Bishop, you may find that some critics, they do say that leaders are making remarks about certain political developments in the country that taints the image of the church and even dilutes the essence of what the church stands for.
In Xhosa, there is a saying that a dog does not bark with the bone, in the mouth, So if a politician puts a bone in the mouth and then he or she does something that your obligation to defend the dignity of other people comes, but then you have this bone then in the mouth, Unfortunately, there are some of us who align themselves with political leaders. And I'm not saying that we should not be friendly to politicians, because they are also members of our congregations, and as human beings they have needs to which we need to pastor. But we cannot align ourselves with their ideologies, because maybe that ideology for now, it may coincide or go along with what we believe, but there will come a time when, it conflicts with what, as church, we stand for. And so to keep away from close alliance, with them as a religious leader, it enables you to be able to challenge that.
And then maybe then, Bishop, as we are in the holiday of the Easter, particularly the Easter weekend, maybe for the layman who then doesn't really quite get the grasp of, the essence really of what the Easter weekend is all about, maybe you can shed some light to that effect.
The Easter event really is a significant sign of hope, symbol of hope in our Christian faith. Because when Christ came on this earth, we believe that he was sent by God to bring the good news, but the forces and the powers that were at that time opposed him and eliminated him and cruelly killed him. And so for those people in his time who had hoped that he was bringing the good news, that seemed to be the end. But we believe that he rose, which therefore means that what seems to have been thwarted, or destroyed, was actually not destroyed, because God, by raising him up, he reaffirmed what he had come for, to preach the good news of the love of God to everybody, of the equality of everybody, of the value of everybody. So therefore, with his resurrection, this is affirmed. Otherwise, if he had died and not rose, then we could say that was just a dream. Now it is over. But now that we believe that he is actually risen, it means that what he stood for actually remains and it stands. And that even in times like this, I mean, we are facing a lot of challenges, challenges which may make other people to lose hope, just like those people when Jesus was killed, lost hope. But after the resurrection, they got empowered, and were alive in their hope. So we too at this time, we continue to hold the Easter event as an event of hope.
There's viewers at home right now watching this interview itself, and they themselves, you may find that they've lost all matter of hopes, as far as the reason for actually, leaving is concerned right here in South Africa. Maybe then you can, try to offer your words of encouragement to such viewers.
I remember going to fill up petrol in one of the petrol stations here. And this young man comes to me and he said, "Sir, I don't want money, just if you have bread, I've been trying and I don't know what to do anymore." And that really stayed with me, that many people, even young people, have lost hope. Now, this message of Easter, of hope, in order for it to be concrete and not to be abstract and too spiritual, it needs to find its fulfillment in me and you who are calling ourselves Christians. Sometimes you may not be able to solve a brother or a sister or a young person's problem, but being awake and present really to that person, like I tried to do with this young man. I spoke with him, I got some history, gave him what I could, advised him what I could advise him with. For that day, he was filled with hope. Some people think that when we are called to give hope to people, we are meant to solve their problems once and for all and immediately. We must give hope to people at that particular time. The person, next to you, where we do what we need to do. And then the next day, God will see how he proceeds then, with that person. So this hope is something that we need to carry out on an everyday basis until finally, because we are people of hope, that God fulfills all these little hopes, that we are giving on an everyday basis. And then it becomes a fulfillment of the big hope where God will restore things to what he had intended them to be.
All right.
And lastly, do you have enough Easter eggs for this?
No, I haven't looked at that yet. I must still talk with Sister here and see if we have some.
I will definitely follow up on that. Thank you very much, Bishop Sipuka, for affording us the opportunity to have a sit down really with you, and just reflect on matters of significance to the church at large.
Thank you for bothering really to come and have this conversation with me. I do hope that it throws some light about the meaning of faith, especially those people who have lost hope. I really pray for them, and I encourage Christians, all those who call themselves Christians, to do something to bring a light of hope to those who are losing hope.